Have you ever walked into a place where you should have been respected, only to be treated like you didn't belong? Imagine stepping up to the counter of your own bank, your name on the building's records, your investments keeping the lights on, yet the staff looks at you with suspicion, whispering that your money couldn't possibly be yours. That's exactly what happened to Dr. Maya Robinson, a black CEO who asked to withdraw $75,000. Instead of dignity, she was met with doubt, humiliation, and the threat of being escorted out by security. Now pause for a moment. If it were you, if your integrity, your worth, your very identity was questioned in front of strangers, what would you do? Would you walk away quietly, or would you stand your ground and reveal a truth powerful enough to freeze the entire room? This story isn't just about one woman and one bank. It's about the choices we face when respect is denied, and the courage it takes to demand dignity in a world that too often withholds it. Stay with us. Like, share, and subscribe, because this is a story you won't forget. The morning light in downtown Atlanta spilled across the glass towers like molten gold. Dr. Maya Robinson stepped out of her modest black SUV and locked the doors with a soft click. For anyone watching, she might have looked like just another professional woman in her late 40s, dressed in faded jeans, a navy sweater, and sneakers that had seen better days. Nothing about her appearance hinted at the kind of wealth or influence she carried. Maya liked it that way. Power, she believed, was best exercised quietly. She had spent years cultivating a reputation for being steady, approachable, and calm, even as she built Robinson Capital Holdings into a multi-billion-dollar financial group. And this morning was supposed to be simple. A quick stop at Heritage National Bank to withdraw $80,000 in cash, then off to sign papers for a community property purchase before lunch. The building would become a new incubator space for minority-owned startups, her personal passion project. She glanced at her watch, 11:15 Plenty of time. The property closing was set for 2:00 p.m., and she'd already mapped the route. All she needed was to pick up the funds she had called ahead about. Inside the marble-lined lobby, the air smelled faintly of polished stone and fresh coffee from the cafe next door. Customers moved quietly in and out. A gray-haired man in a pinstripe suit chatted with a teller, laughing at something. A young mother soothed her toddler while waiting in line. Ordinary moments in an ordinary morning. Maya breathed in, letting herself feel the rhythm of the space. She carried a slim leather portfolio under her arm, embossed with her initials, though no one ever seemed to notice the details. To them, she was just another black woman in casual clothes. "Let's get this done," she murmured to herself. She approached the counter where a young teller, Isabella Cruz, sat. The woman's smile was hesitant but polite. "Good morning," Maya said, sliding her withdrawal slip across. "I'd like to take out $80,000, please." The words hung in the air. Isabella blinked, eyes darting from the slip to Maya's face, then back again. Her training told her to remain neutral, but uncertainty crept in. Few people requested that much in cash on a weekday morning. Before Isabella could respond, a firm voice cut across the lobby. "Excuse me, I'll handle this." Thomas Grayson, the branch manager, stepped forward. He was a tall man in his early 50s, his crisp navy suit pressed sharp enough to cut. His gaze slid over Maya with thinly veiled disdain, pausing at her sneakers, her sweater, her natural curls pulled back in a simple bun. "Ma'am," he said, standing squarely between her and the counter, "are you certain you're in the right place?" Maya met his stare evenly. "Yes, I have an account here. I'd like to make a withdrawal." The words were calm, steady, yet already a quiet ripple of tension moved through the room. A man waiting nearby glanced over. The young mother shifted uncomfortably. Thomas picked up the slip from the counter like it might soil his fingers. $80,000, he repeated loudly, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You don't seriously expect to walk out of here with that kind of money, do you?" Maya said nothing at first. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than protest. But inside, a familiar ache stirred the exhaustion of being doubted before a single fact was checked. "I do expect it," she replied finally. "This is a legitimate withdrawal from my account." Her voice carried a steadiness that drew a few more glances from across the lobby. People began to sense something unusual unfolding. Thomas leaned closer, lowering his voice, though it still carried a bite. "Lady, accounts like this usually belong to people who, let's just say, don't come dressed like you." The sentence dangled, ugly and unfinished. Maya felt her jaw tighten. For a moment she considered telling him who she was right then, ending it quickly. But another part of her, the part that understood patience as a form of strength, whispered, "Not yet. Let them reveal themselves fully." So instead, she smiled politely. "I'd still like to proceed with my withdrawal." She could feel the weight of eyes on her now, the subtle judgment of strangers, the quiet shuffling of feet as customers pretended not to listen. The marble lobby suddenly felt colder, heavier. In her chest, Maya carried both irritation and resolve. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Baby, storms come to test your roots. Stand firm, and let them see what you're made of." This morning, she thought, was supposed to be ordinary, but storms had a way of arriving when least expected, and this one was only just beginning. The seconds stretched after Thomas Grayson's remark, his words hanging in the air like a heavy curtain. The young teller, Isabella Cruz, lowered her eyes to the counter, her fingers fidgeting with a stack of deposit slips. She didn't dare interrupt her manager, though the unease on her face betrayed her discomfort. "Doctor." Maya Robinson stood with her shoulders straight, posture calm, her leather portfolio balanced against her arm. On the outside, she looked unshaken. Inside, however, she felt the familiar tug of exhaustion. The script was always the same: suspicion first, questions second, humanity last. A cough echoed from the line behind her. A man in a gray business jacket whispered to his companion, "What's going on 80 grand?" His words carried curiosity, but also something sharper, the implication that someone like Maya had no business requesting such a sum. Thomas raised the withdrawal slip higher, as if to showcase it to the entire lobby. $80,000, he repeated again, with the kind of emphasis one might reserve for a lottery win or a stolen fortune. "Tell me, ma'am, where exactly did you get this account number?" Maya inhaled slowly. "It is my account number. The funds are mine. But Thomas wasn't interested in her words. He turned deliberately toward Isabella. "Call security," he said, voice carrying across the polished lobby. "We may have a fraudulent attempt here." The customers began to stir. Some craned their necks, others avoided eye contact. Maya felt the atmosphere shift, the marble floors reflecting more than light. They mirrored the unease in the room. Isabella hesitated, her lips parting, but before she could move, the automatic doors swished open. Marcus Lee, the bank's security guard, stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the alert eyes of someone trained to spot trouble before it began. His radio crackled faintly as he scanned the scene. "What's the issue?" Marcus asked, his gaze moving from Thomas to Maya. Thomas gestured broadly at her. "This woman is attempting a suspicious withdrawal. Large cash request, no proper documentation." Maya met Marcus's eyes. She saw no immediate hostility there, just routine caution. Still, the framing mattered. She was already being introduced as a suspect. "I have my identification," Maya said evenly, retrieving her driver's license and bank card from her wallet. She held them out, steady hands betraying none of the frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. Thomas snatched the cards before Marcus could, waving them slightly in the air. "An ID and card can be stolen. We need more. Proof of employment, proof of address, explanation of fund sources." His tone grew louder with each phrase, designed for the audience, not for the truth. From the corner seating area, a man in his 30s. Jamal Turner pulled out his phone. He had been scrolling aimlessly before the commotion caught his attention. Now he tapped into TikTok Live, his caption quick and sharp. "Bank treating this sister like a criminal for her own money." At first, only a handful of his friends tuned in. But as Thomas's voice boomed across the lobby, the viewer count began to tick upward. Maya, still calm, responded, "I'm not required to provide proof of employment to withdraw money from my own account. This is an account I've had with Heritage National for decades." Thomas gave a laugh devoid of humor. "Decades, lady. Accounts like this, accounts with balances like this, don't usually belong to people who he stopped himself." But the smirk finished the sentence for him. Maya's jaw tightened. She thought of her late father, who once told her, "They'll measure your worth by their own narrow yardsticks. Never shrink yourself to fit them." She straightened slightly, not for Thomas, but for herself. "I will be speaking to your supervisor," she said calmly. "You'll speak to whoever I tell you to," Thomas snapped. "And right now, that's security." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't eager to escalate matters with a woman who stood so composed. But Thomas was his superior. He kept his stance neutral, hands resting lightly on his duty belt. Meanwhile, whispers fluttered across the lobby. The mother with the toddler hugged her child closer. The man in the pinstripe suit at another counter signed for his own withdrawal $5,000 without a single question asked. The teller serving him smiled, stamped the slip, and handed over the cash as if it were a bag of groceries. The hypocrisy landed like a stone in Maya's chest. She was being interrogated for simply existing in the same space with a larger request. Her mind flickered through old memories, denied mortgage applications despite perfect credit, questioned business contracts, the sting of being asked, "Do you really own this company?" She had fought her way past all of it, but here she was, once again, facing the same quiet violence of disbelief. Jamal's live stream ticked past 50 viewers. Comments scrolled quickly. "This is banking while black. What bank is this?" Why, they treating her like a criminal Thomas. Oblivious to the growing digital audience, leaned closer, his words sharp enough to cut. Normal people don't just walk around with $80,000. Where did it really come from? Drug money, insurance fraud, welfare scams. The accusations spilled like smoke, thick and suffocating. Maya inhaled slowly, exhaled even slower. She reminded herself anger feeds the fire, calm exposes it. Her voice was level, though her heart pressed hard against her ribs. "Those are serious accusations. Mr. Grayson, I suggest you process my withdrawal before this situation escalates further." His eyes gleamed with triumph. "Oh, it's going to escalate. Don't worry about that." Isabella shifted uncomfortably again. Her conscience battled with her role. She glanced once at Maya, then quickly away. Maya noticed. She thought the young ones see the truth. They just don't always have the power to act on it. The room's tension thickened. Every second stretched longer, every whisper sharper. Maya stood, the embodiment of restraint, while the walls of suspicion closed in. It was only 11:28. Bank lunch closure loomed in just over 30 minutes. Time was slipping, and Maya knew her window for calm resolution was narrowing. She pressed her hand lightly against her portfolio. Inside lay documents that could end the farce instantly. But she wasn't ready to reveal them. Not yet. For now, she would let the storm build, because sometimes storms cleared the sky better than silence ever could. The lobby of Heritage National Bank seemed to grow smaller with every passing second. Conversations hushed, footsteps slowed, and the quiet hum of printers and counting machines became the only background music. What had begun as an ordinary morning had shifted into something heavier, like a storm pressing against the windows. Thomas Grayson still held Maya Robinson's withdrawal slip aloft, as if the piece of paper alone condemned her. His face, flushed with certainty, left no room for reason. "I need to see more documentation," he declared. "Employment verification. Tax record, something that explains why you'd be moving this much cash. Until then, this request is on hold." Maya steadied her voice. "Mr. Grayson, I've already provided my identification and bank card. That is the standard procedure for every other customer." Behind her, the whispers continued. A man muttered, $80,000, she's kidding herself. Another voice countered softly, or maybe she actually has it. Why shouldn't she? The tension in those exchanges mirrored the larger tension in the room, disbelief battling possibility. Isabella Cruz, the teller, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her training manuals had never given her a script for this exact moment. She looked from Thomas to Maya and back again, caught between the authority of her boss and the fairness her conscience demanded. Jamal Turner's live stream climbed past 300 viewers. His camera framed the scene, a confident black woman standing firm, a red-faced manager trying to box her in, and a room full of spectators unsure of where justice lay. Comments scrolled across his screen. "This feels wrong. They didn't ask that old man anything for his withdrawal. Name and shame the bank. Maya noticed Jamal's phone raised but didn't react. She had spent her life under scrutiny. If her story was being captured, so be it. Thomas leaned closer, lowering his voice but not his hostility. Look, ma'am, I don't know what game you're playing, but we're not letting drug money walk out our doors. You can either cooperate, or this ends with the police. Her pulse quickened, but her face remained composed. Inside, she wrestled with the temptation to cut the confrontation short, to open her portfolio, show her ownership papers, and silence him. Yet she resisted. She thought of the dozens of others who would never have such papers to pull out, the ones who would walk away humiliated, unseen. If I end this too early, nothing changes, she told herself. Let the truth come out in its own time. Her silence seemed to unnerve Thomas more than any protest could. He turned toward Marcus Lee, the security guard. Escort her to the Wayden office. We'll figure out what to do with her there. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't blind. He had watched the entire interaction unfold, and something about Maya's poise gave him pause. She didn't look like someone trying to sneak through a fraud. She looked like someone who had endured this too many times. Still, orders were orders. Ma'am, he said carefully, if you'd come with me, I'm not going anywhere. Maya interrupted, her voice steady. Not until my transaction is processed like every other customer's. The firmness in her tone drew a ripple through the room. People straightened in their chairs, sensing the weight of her words. Isabella finally spoke, her voice trembling. Mr. Grayson, the account number she gave is valid. I checked it. The system shows available funds. Thomas turned on her sharply. That doesn't mean it's legitimate. Do you want to be responsible for letting laundered cash leave this building? Isabella shrank back, cheeks burning. She knew she was right, but Thomas's authority loomed over her like a shadow. Maya softened her expression toward the young teller. Thank you for checking, she said kindly, then looked back at Thomas. You see, the money is there. The rest is your prejudice talking. Her words struck like a bell. A man sitting nearby muttered, She's right. Another whispered, This is discrimination. Jamal's viewer count ticked past 700. The comments grew sharper. Call the news. This is why people don't trust banks. She's handling it like a queen. The lobby's atmosphere shifted from curiosity to moral tension. It was no longer just a woman versus a manager. It was a mirror of something larger, older, and far more painful. Thomas, sensing the crowd's sympathy leaning toward Maya, raised his voice further. Enough. This conversation is over. Until I'm satisfied, no funds are leaving this account. Security. Take her out. Marcus took a slow step forward. His posture was professional, but his eyes flicked toward Maya with something almost apologetic. Maya clasped her hands in front of her, her leather portfolio tucked close. Stay calm, she reminded herself. This is not about winning an argument. This is about exposing a truth. Aloud, she said, Mr. Grayson, what you're doing right now is not just disrespectful. It is unlawful. You're denying me access to my own funds on the basis of nothing but your assumptions about who I am. The words rippled outward. Even the toddler, sensing the weight in the air, stopped fussing and looked around with wide eyes. Clara Whitfield, the regional manager, appeared just then, summoned by a frantic call from Thomas. Her tailored gray suit and pearl necklace gave her an air of authority. She scanned the room, then approached quickly. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked. Her tone brisk. Thomas was quick to answer. "This woman is attempting to withdraw an unusually large sum. I believe the account may be fraudulent." Maya interjected before Clara could reply. "The account is mine. The funds are available. Your teller confirmed it. Yet your manager's treating me like a criminal." Clara's eyes flicked over Maya, then down to her sneakers and casual sweater. A subtle arch of her brow betrayed her skepticism. "Alleged account holders sometimes fabricate documents," she said smoothly. "We have to protect the bank." "Alleged," Maya repeated softly, tasting the word like ash. How many times had her legitimacy been framed as an allegation? The live stream hit 1,000 viewers. Comments scrolled in fury. "She gave ID. What else do they want? This is straight-up racism. Keep recording. Bro." Maya felt her breath steady. The storm was reaching its height, but she knew storms always cleared. She straightened her shoulders, eyes calm but unyielding. "If this is the standard you apply to every customer, then so be it. But we both know it isn't. I will not be escorted out of this bank. I will not be silenced. And I will not be treated as less than who I am." The room fell silent, the truth echoing louder than any accusation. And though the confrontation was far from over, the balance of power had begun to shift. The fluorescent lights above seemed harsher now, bouncing off the marble floor and throwing pale shadows against the glass doors. The lobby was no longer just a place of business. It had become a stage. Every cough, every shuffle of feet, every whispered comment echoed louder than usual. Thomas Grayson's face was tight with determination. He had already staked his authority, and backing down now would look like weakness. With Clara Whitfield's arrival, his posture grew even more rigid. He turned to her as though expecting affirmation. "Clara, you see what I'm dealing with," Thomas said, waving the slip like evidence in a courtroom. "A suspiciously large withdrawal request, no proper documentation. I'm trying to protect the bank." Clara nodded slowly, though her eyes remained on Maya Robinson. There was a chill in her gaze, as if she'd already chosen sides before hearing the full story. Maya could sense it, the familiar collusion of bias disguised as protocol. She felt the knot in her chest tighten, but her expression stayed composed. "The only suspicious thing here," she said clearly, "is the way I'm being treated differently from the gentleman who just walked out with 5,000 in cash. No questions asked." Clara's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Context matters. 5,000 is not 80. We cannot simply let tens of thousands leave without due diligence." Jamal Turner, still live streaming, whispered to someone nearby, "They're moving the goalposts. Watch this." His viewers shot past 2,000. The scrolling comments burned with indignation. "It's her money. Notice how they keep changing the excuse. This is why trust in banks is at an all-time low." Thomas leaned toward Marcus Lee, the security guard. "Escort her to the back office. If she refuses, Call the police. Let them sort this out. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. His duty was to follow orders, but his instincts tugged against them. Something in Maya's quiet dignity, her calm refusal to be rattled, unsettled him. He imagined his own mother, standing in her place, questioned and cornered for no reason beyond assumptions. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "maybe we should do it." Thomas snapped, cutting him off. His tone carried not just urgency, but something closer to desperation. He was losing control of the room, and he knew it. Maya lifted her chin. "So, this is where we are. You intend to detain me for requesting my own funds." Her voice carried across the lobby, reaching every corner. Even the customers who had tried to stay detached could no longer ignore the reality. A woman in her 70s, silver hair tucked neatly under a hat, stepped forward from the line. Her voice trembled but was firm. "I've banked here for 20 years. I've never seen anyone treated like this." She showed her ID. That's enough. The ripple of agreement grew. A few customers nodded, murmuring their assent. Clara frowned, clearly irritated at the challenge. "Ma'am, please remain calm. We are ensuring compliance with federal regulations." "Regulations," the elderly woman shot back. "Or prejudice?" The question hung heavy, and no one moved to answer. Maya felt something stir inside her, not triumph, not yet, but solidarity. For so long, she had borne these battles alone. Now, others were beginning to recognize the pattern. Still, the immediate danger remained. Marcus took a step closer, his presence a reminder of the fine line between inconvenience and escalation. Maya thought of her afternoon deadline, the property closing she was supposed to attend. With every minute wasted, the opportunity for the community project slipped further from reach. Her inner voice weighed the options. Do I reveal the truth now, end this before it spirals further, or let them press harder, expose themselves completely? She glanced at her portfolio, still tucked against her side. The power within those documents pulsed like a heartbeat. But timing was everything. Thomas mistook her silence for fear. He smirked, addressing the room as much as her. "This is what happens when people think they can game the system. We catch them. We protect honest customers." Jamal whispered to his phone. "He's doubling down. This is going to blow up." The viewer count soared past 3,000. Comments rolled fast. "She's so calm. He's losing it. Security better not touch her." This is history right here. Isabella Cruz couldn't take it anymore. Her voice broke through, small but steady. "Mr. Grayson, the account is real. The funds are there. I verified it twice. You're not protecting the bank. You're harassing her." A hush fell again. Even Clara blinked in surprise at the open defiance. Thomas turned scarlet. "Isabella, another word and you'll be written up. You don't understand what's at stake." But Isabella didn't shrink this time. Her eyes flicked toward Maya, then to Jamal's raised phone, and she realized the world was watching. Maya's heart swelled with quiet respect for the young teller. She saw in Isabella the beginnings of a conscience refusing to stay caged. Clara intervened quickly, her voice sharper now. "Enough. This is not up for debate. Security, remove her from the premises if she will not cooperate. I'll make the necessary calls to federal authorities myself." The mention of federal authorities drew a collective gasp. To call in law enforcement for a verified account holder was beyond policy. It was persecution. Maya closed her eyes for a brief second, centering herself. She heard her grandmother's voice in memory. When the world tells you you don't belong, stand taller. You belong by the fact that you stand. Opening her eyes, she spoke with quiet force. If you call law enforcement, then call them. I have nothing to hide. But understand this: every second you delay, every insult you pile on, is being recorded, remembered, and reckoned with. The words landed like thunder, reverberating through the tense silence. Marcus hesitated again. His hand hovered near his radio but did not move. His conscience warred with his duty, visible in the tight line of his jaw. Maya stood motionless, her stillness louder than any raised voice. She had been here before in boardrooms where her intelligence was underestimated, in negotiations where her gender and skin color were treated like handicaps, and every time she had chosen composure over collapse. The lobby clock ticked past 11:40. Her deadline loomed, yet she knew this confrontation was no longer just about her. It was about every silent humiliation, every whispered doubt, every slammed door, and the storm was not finished gathering. By the time Clara Whitfield had fully taken charge of the situation, the energy in the lobby had shifted. What began as murmurs of discomfort had turned into open unease. Customers exchanged looks, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Jamal Turner's live-stream audience ticked past 5,000. His phone angled perfectly to capture Clara's poised authority against Maya Robinson's calm defiance. Clara adjusted the pearl necklace at her collarbone, a gesture both habitual and calculated. She exuded the kind of confidence honed from years of corporate boardrooms, where appearances carried more weight than truth. With a measured smile, she addressed Maya as though soothing a child. "Dr. Robinson, you must understand," Clara began, her voice smooth but firm. "Our duty is to safeguard this institution. Large withdrawals, particularly in cash, can raise red flags. We simply can't approve this without a more thorough review." Maya noted the deliberate use of her title. Clara had read her ID, yet the respect sounded hollow, as though spoken to neutralize the crowd rather than honor the woman before her. "I understand the duty of safeguarding," Maya replied, her voice steady. "What I don't understand is why I'm being treated like a suspect when your own staff has verified the funds are there." The elderly customer who had spoken earlier nodded, arms folded. "She's right. This is discrimination, plain and simple." Thomas Grayson shot the woman a glare, but Clara silenced him with a raised hand. "Let's not inflame the situation," Clara said smoothly. "We will sort this out properly. In the meantime, Dr. Robinson, perhaps you would be more comfortable waiting in our private office while we conduct the necessary checks." Maya tilted her head. The offer sounded like courtesy, but it was really containment. They wanted her out of sight, away from witnesses, isolated where their assumptions could fester unchecked. "No," Maya said softly. "I'll stay right here." The firmness in her refusal startled Clara. Few people said no to her, especially not in public. Her jaw tightened just slightly, though she maintained her polished exterior. Marcus Lee, still hovering near, felt the rising pressure. His instincts urged him to de-escalate, yet he could see that the true escalation wasn't coming from Maya at all. It was radiating from the bank's leadership. Jamal whispered into his phone, "She's standing her ground. They're trying to push her out of sight. This is bigger than money now." His audience exploded with comments. "Stay strong, sis. This is systemic bias live on camera. We're watching history unfold." Maya could feel the weight of those unseen eyes. Thousands of witnesses now linked into her reality. She thought of the countless times she had endured these humiliations privately, where no camera caught the sting of prejudice. For once, the light was on, and she intended to let it shine. Clara tried again, her voice a notch sharper. "You must realize this looks unusual. Cash withdrawals of this size are rare. Why not a wire transfer? Why insist on cash?" Maya's eyes softened, though her words cut with precision. "Because the seller of the property I'm purchasing requested it, and because it is my right to access my money in whatever form I choose. Unless you plan to deny that right outright, your reasoning is irrelevant." Clara faltered. The polished mask cracked for just a breath before she smoothed it over. She exchanged a look with Thomas, a silent agreement to hold their line. "Marcus," Clara ordered, "escort Dr. Robinson to the office. If she resists, we will notify federal authorities immediately." The words struck like a hammer. Customers gasped. Isabella Cruz dropped her pen. Jamal nearly cursed into his phone. Maya's heart thudded once, hard, but she kept her composure. "They're pushing me to break," she realized. "If I lose my calm, I lose the ground I've claimed." Her inner voice whispered her father's wisdom. Strength isn't in shouting louder. It's in knowing when silence says more. So she stood, silent for a moment, letting the absurdity of their threat echo in the marble lobby. The silence grew so long that it became unbearable for Thomas, who snapped, "Do you have something to hide? Is that why you won't move? That broke the dam?" A middle-aged man in line stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. You're threatening to call the feds on a woman who's done nothing but ask for her own money. You didn't ask me a thing when I withdrew 15 grand last month." His admission stirred others. A woman in business attire murmured, "They never questioned me either." The chorus of quiet testimonies gathered weight. Clara's face flushed, realizing the narrative was slipping beyond her control. Still, she pressed forward. "We have procedures. If you are all so concerned, perhaps you should remember that these protocols protect everyone." But the customers weren't convinced. The room, once compliant, had become a jury. Maya finally spoke again, her voice even but carrying the gravity of truth. "Your so-called procedures are applied selectively. And today, they have revealed exactly what you think of me before you know anything about me." The impact was immediate. Jamal's phone buzzed with notifications. Hashtags began trending in real time. Out banking, while black. Her money, her right. Maya's mind flickered through the irony she'd prepared meticulously for her afternoon meeting, for the celebration of opening doors for young entrepreneurs. And now, here she was, standing in a lobby being told her very existence was questionable. The weight of it pressed heavy, but she found her spine straightening. She was no stranger to carrying weight. Clara, sensing her grip loosening, changed tactics. Very well, Dr. Robinson. If you refuse to cooperate, we will document this as noncompliance. Understand, that will impact your account standing. Thomas smirked, certain this threat would make her fold. But Maya's eyes did not waver. Do what you feel you must, she said, but every action you take is being witnessed, by those here and by many more you cannot see. Her gaze slid deliberately toward Jamal's phone. Clara followed it, and for the first time her polished mask faltered in genuine alarm. The livestream count surged past 7,000. The crowd outside the bank had begun to grow too, passers-by curious about the scene streaming from inside. Inside Maya's chest, two truths wrestled the fear of what might come next, and the conviction that she was exactly where she needed to be. The second truth held stronger. She inhaled, slow and deliberate, and thought, let them call who they want. Let them pile the threats higher. The higher they pile, the clearer the truth becomes when it all falls down. And for the first time since entering that marble lobby, Maya felt something shift deep within her, not just the need to defend herself, but the certainty that this moment could open a door much larger than the one she had come to unlock. The tension inside Heritage National's marble lobby had become unbearable. Every second ticked louder against the ornate clock above the teller line, and every glance from the crowd carried the weight of judgment. Jamal Turner's live stream swelled beyond 10,000 viewers. Comments scrolling so fast they blurred. Marcus Lee, the head of security, stood like a wall beside Clara Whitfield, his hand hovering near the radio clipped to his belt. He had carried out hundreds of removals in his career, but none had ever felt like this. Something in his gut told him this wasn't a disorderly customer. It was something bigger, something that could stain the bank forever. Dr. Maya Robinson, meanwhile, appeared almost serene. Her calm unnerved the staff, who had expected panic, anger, or pleading by now. Instead, she simply waited. Her portfolio resting lightly at her side, her eyes steady. Clara, however, could no longer ignore the optics. The murmurs from customers were growing louder. A young woman whispered. "Why are they still holding her up?" a businessman muttered. "This is going to blow up in their faces." Clara drew herself tall. "Marcus, please remove Dr. Robinson from the premises." Marcus hesitated. His instincts screamed caution. "Ma'am, before we escalate now." Clara snapped, her polished composure cracking for the first time. Thomas Grayson smirked in triumph, as if the end was near. He could already imagine reporting that he had rooted out another fraud attempt, cementing his loyalty to protocol. But just as Marcus took a reluctant step forward, Maya moved. She bent down calmly, opened her portfolio, and drew out a heavy folder. Its crisp, embossed seal gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Before you make another mistake," Maya said softly, "you should look at this." Her voice was quiet, yet it sliced through the lobby like a bell. Conversations halted. Even the air seemed to still. Clara narrowed her eyes. "What is this supposed to be?" Maya held it out without flinching. "Corporate acquisition documents. Williams Financial Holdings, my company, acquired control and interest in Heritage National Bank 8 months ago. 71% to be exact." The words dropped like a stone into deep water, rippling outward. Thomas let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, please. More fabricated paperwork. We've seen scams like this before." But Clara's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the folder. She scanned the first page, her eyes darting over embossed seals, notarized signatures, and the unmistakable corporate logo. Her breath caught. "This can't be," she whispered. Maya's expression didn't change. "It is." Jamal's livestream chat exploded. "What? She owns the bank plot twist of the century." Clara's polished demeanor crumbled. She flipped through page after page, her pulse quickening. Legal filings, registration numbers, the acquisition agreement signed and dated. Everything bore the authenticity she couldn't deny. "This says," Clara's voice faltered. "What does it say?" Thomas demanded, irritation masking his fear. Clara finally looked up, her face pale. "It says Dr. Robinson is the majority shareholder. She owns this bank." The lobby erupted. Customers gasped, whispered, and raised their phones higher to capture every angle. Even Isabella Cruz, the young teller, covered her mouth in shock. Marcus Lee froze mid-step, his hand falling away from the radio. His years of training screamed for de-escalation, and now he knew why. He had nearly laid hands on his employer. Maya stood quietly, her dignity intact, though her heart beat like a drum against her ribs. The reveal had landed exactly as she knew it would, but even so, the rush of vindication filled her chest. Thomas stumbled back a step, color draining from his face. "That's impossible. This woman, this can't be real." Maya's voice cut in, calm but edged with steel. "You assumed my appearance defined my worth. You assumed faded jeans and natural hair meant fraud. What you failed to assume is that a black woman could walk into this lobby owning more of it than anyone else here." The words stung. They were not shouted, but spoken with a weight that settled on every ear. Clara tried to gather herself. "Dr. Robinson, surely we can resolve this quietly." "There's no need for further quietly," Maya interrupted, her gaze unwavering. "You humiliated me in front of customers. You accused me of laundering money. You threatened me with federal fraud charges. Tell me, how does one resolve that quietly?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ticking of the ornate clock seemed to pause. Jamal narrated softly into his phone. "This is history right here. They tried to drag her out, and she owns the whole damn bank." His audience soared past 15,000. Maya turned to Marcus, her tone shifting, more compassionate now. "Mr. Lee, I respect the work you do. I know you follow orders, but you were about to put handcuffs on your chairman. Does that seem right to you?" Marcus's throat tightened. "No, ma'am, it doesn't." The honesty in his voice carried across the room, puncturing what remained of Thomas's false confidence. Clara set the folder down on the counter, her hands visibly shaking. "Dr. Robinson, on behalf of the bank, I deeply regret." But Maya wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and spoke calmly. "Patricia, it's Maya. Yes, the evaluation at the downtown branch is complete. Schedule an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. We'll also need legal on standby. Thank you." The words emergency board meeting hit Thomas like a verdict. His smirk collapsed into panic. He knew what that meant. Disciplinary reviews, personnel terminations, policy overhauls. His career was slipping through his fingers. Customers whispered fiercely now. "She's the chairwoman. They messed with the wrong woman." Clara attempted one last stand. "Perhaps we can resolve this internally before news spreads further." Maya raised a brow. "Do you think news hasn't already spread?" Her gaze slid to Jamal's phone, which now showed over 18,000 live viewers. The comments raced, "Protect Maya Robinson. This is a masterclass in dignity. Fire them all." The reality dawned on Clara. They weren't just facing one customer anymore. They were facing the court of public opinion, live, in real time. Maya exhaled slowly. Her father's voice echoed again in her mind. "When they try to shut you out, remind them you built the door." She turned back to the counter, where her crumpled withdrawal slip still sat. With deliberate calm, she smoothed it against the marble surface. "I came here for $75,000 to close on a property by she said evenly. "That transaction will be processed immediately. Then, this afternoon, we'll address the systemic issues that made today possible." Nobody dared to argue. Thomas's mouth opened, then closed again, his confidence gone. Clara lowered her head, words failing her. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, knowing the spotlight had shifted from a routine security call to a career-defining moment. And Maya Robinson, poised, unshaken, her truth undeniable, stood at the center of it all, transforming humiliation into power with nothing more than composure, preparation, and the strength of ownership. The echo of Maya Robinson's words still lingered in the vaulted ceiling when the heavy glass doors at the back of the lobby opened. A man in his late 50s strode in, his suit rumpled as if he had come in a hurry. His silver hair was damp with sweat, his jaw tight. Customers turned toward him instinctively. The presence of authority was unmistakable. Richard Coleman, president of Heritage National Bank, had arrived. "Chairwoman Robinson," he said, his voice catching just slightly as he spoke her name. "I came as soon as I was notified." The entire room shifted. For the first time since Maya had walked into the bank, the balance of power was visible. Clara Whitfield and Thomas Grayson stiffened, their eyes darting between Richard and Maya. Marcus Lee took a step back. Radio forgotten at his side, Isabella Cruz's lips parted in shock. Maya remained composed. "Mr. Coleman," she acknowledged. "Your timing is fortunate." Richard glanced at the crumpled withdrawal slip on the counter, the scattered papers Clara had dropped, and the anxious faces of both employees and customers. He knew instantly that whatever had transpired here was already a disaster. "Would someone explain to me why my chairwoman is standing in the lobby, surrounded by accusations and security?" he demanded, his tone sharp but restrained. Thomas opened his mouth first, desperate to salvage his authority. "Mr. Coleman, we were simply enforcing fraud prevention procedures. This woman, watch your words. Mr. Grayson," Richard cut him off, his voice like a whip. "You will address her properly." The sharp rebuke silenced Thomas instantly. The smugness he had worn all morning evaporated, replaced by visible dread. Clara stepped forward, her usual polish cracking under the weight of the moment. "President Coleman, I take full responsibility. We believe the withdrawal suspicious. The documentation. Richard raised his hand. Stop. Whatever justifications you're preparing will not undo the fact that you treated our majority shareholder as if she were a criminal. Gasps rippled again through the lobby. Some customers had not fully grasped the twist until that very moment. Jamal Turner's livestream count rocketed past 20,000 as viewers typed furiously. The president just confirmed it. She's the owner. Y'all, they harassed their boss. Unreal. This is history. Maya's expression softened only slightly. Mr. Coleman, I came here for a routine transaction. $75,000 to secure a property closing. Instead, I was accused of drug dealing, money laundering, welfare fraud, and threatened with federal charges in front of your customers and thousands more online. Richard's shoulders slumped, the full weight of the catastrophe settling on him. He turned to the staff. Thomas, Clara, do you have any idea what you've done? Neither spoke. Thomas stared at the floor, his face pale. Clara's fingers twisted the pearls at her neck until they dug into her skin. Maya's voice was low, but it carried the clarity of judgment. This isn't only about me. I watched a man withdraw $5,000 without a single question. I watched a young woman take out $2,000 with a smile and no suspicion. The difference today was not the money. The difference was me. The words struck harder than any raised voice could. Customers nodded, murmuring agreement. Jamal whispered into his phone, "She's telling the truth," and everyone here saw it. Richard inhaled deeply, then looked Maya in the eyes. "You are absolutely right. On behalf of this institution, I apologize deeply and unequivocally. What you endured here is indefensible." Maya studied him for a moment, reading the sincerity in his features. He was rattled. Yes, but also earnest. "Apologies are only the beginning," she said gently. "What matters is what follows." Richard nodded firmly. "Then we will begin now." He turned to Marcus Lee. "Mr. Lee, please ensure Dr. Robinson's transaction is processed immediately. Full courtesy, full discretion." Marcus nodded with visible relief. "Yes, sir." He gestured to Isabella, who fumbled for the paperwork, her hands still shaking. As the teller began inputting the details, Richard addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed a failure of our institution. I will not make excuses, but I will assure you this Heritage National Bank will take immediate steps to ensure such failures never happen again." His words calmed some of the murmurs, but the sting of what had happened remained heavy in the air. Clara finally found her voice, brittle though it was. "Mr. Coleman, surely we can resolve disciplinary matters internally." Richard's eyes flashed. "Internally, this is already external. The world is watching. Do you not see the cameras, the live streams?" He gestured toward Jamal, who held up his phone sheepishly. "Over 20,000 people," Jamal murmured, loud enough for several to hear. Clara paled further. Richard turned back to Maya, chairwoman. "How do you wish us to proceed?" It was the question no one else had asked all morning. For the first time, someone with power placed the choice in her hands. Maya let the silence stretch, considering. Then she spoke, her voice clear and steady. "We will convene an emergency board session this afternoon. Policies will be reviewed, accountability will be enforced, and training will be mandatory across every branch. Customers nodded approvingly. Even those who had been silent earlier felt the resonance of her words. Thomas swallowed hard. "Chairwoman, please. I was only doing my job." "Your job," Maya replied softly, "is to serve customers with dignity and fairness. You failed at that, repeatedly. Today, your performance will be documented and reviewed by the board." Thomas's knees nearly buckled. He could already see the end of his career. Clara tried again. "I can design new training modules." Personally, Maya held up a hand. "You will not lead training until you yourself have completed it. 6 months of probationary oversight will be more appropriate. The culture that allowed this to happen must be rebuilt from the ground up." The weight of her words left Clara speechless. Meanwhile, Isabella placed a neat stack of bills into an envelope and slid it across the counter with trembling hands. 75,000. Dr. Robinson. Counted twice. Maya accepted it calmly, tucking it into her portfolio. She gave Isabella a small, measured smile. "Thank you. Remember this moment. Choose differently next time." The teller's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Richard exhaled, wiping his brow. "Chairwoman Robinson, I assure you, I will personally oversee the implementation of any reforms you require, and I will face the board myself this afternoon. We cannot undo what has happened, but we can build differently moving forward." Maya regarded him with quiet intensity. "Then let us do exactly that." Jamal ended his live stream with a final whisper. She walked in for 75,000. She walked out owning the whole damn story. The sun had shifted higher by the time Dr. Maya Robinson left the downtown Atlanta branch of Heritage National Bank. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, buzzing with curiosity. Some applauded softly as she stepped through the glass doors, her portfolio secured under her arm. Jamal Turner, exhausted but exhilarated, closed his live stream only after catching her calm stride into a waiting black sedan. Inside the car, Maya exhaled. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation now gave way to exhaustion. She leaned back, eyes closed, recalling every insult hurled at her, every face twisted in suspicion. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Was I too harsh, too public? But then she pictured the faces of customers who had spoken up the elderly woman, the young man who confessed he was never questioned. She thought of the thousands of strangers flooding the live stream with encouragement. No, she told herself. She had not been too harsh. She had been honest. Her assistant, Patricia, sat across from her in the car, tablet already glowing. "Maya, the board has been assembled for 2 o'clock. Legal is preparing a packet of incident reports, plus the live stream transcripts. Media inquiries are pouring in." Maya opened her eyes. "Let them wait. Our first responsibility is internal. If we don't clean our own house, the outside world will never trust us again." By 1:30, the executive boardroom on the 32nd floor of Heritage's headquarters hummed with tension. Glass walls framed sweeping views of the Atlanta skyline, but no one admired them. 12 directors sat in leather chairs, whispering nervously as screens displayed headlines: "Black CEO denied withdrawal at bank she owns. Heritage National faces scandal." After live stream incident, when Maya entered, the room fell silent. Richard Coleman rose immediately. Chairwoman Robinson. She nodded to him, then surveyed the faces of the board. Some looked guilty, others defensive. A few avoided her gaze entirely. She placed her portfolio on the table, drew out the folder of acquisition documents she had presented in the lobby, and set it before her like evidence in a trial. This morning, she began, her voice calm but firm. I walked into our downtown branch for a simple transaction. Instead, I was profiled, humiliated, and threatened, not as a chairwoman, not as a customer, but as a black woman. The bluntness of her words hit the room like a gavel. A few directors shifted uncomfortably. Had I not been the majority shareholder, Maya continued. The story would have ended with me in handcuffs, escorted out of my own bank. That is not a matter of protocol. That is a matter of culture. And it is a culture we must confront now. Richard cleared his throat. The live stream has reached over 30,000 views, and rising. Public pressure will demand accountability. Maya looked at him. Accountability is not only for the public's sake. It is for the sake of every customer who has walked into our branches and wondered whether their skin color or accent or background would decide their treatment. A director with salt and pepper hair spoke hesitantly. Dr. Robinson, no one condones what happened, but do you think it fair to call this systemic one-branch manager, one regional director? Maya's eyes locked on him. Do you believe this is the first time, or only the first time someone with power stood up and refused to be silent? The room stilled. The director lowered his gaze. Patricia slid a report across the table. Customer complaints over the past 5 years show a pattern: higher denial rates, longer wait times, and increased documentation demands disproportionately affecting minority clients. This morning's incident was not an outlier. It was a symptom. Whispers rippled through the room as directors scanned the data. The numbers told a story many had chosen to ignore. Maya let the silence linger before speaking again. We have a choice. Pretend this was an isolated mistake or acknowledge the truth and rebuild from it. Her voice deepened, carrying the weight of her conviction. I propose the following immediate suspension of all staff directly involved until investigation is complete. Mandatory anti-bias and dignity training across all branches. Creation of an independent oversight committee, and quarterly audits of customer interactions segmented by demographics. One director, a woman with sharp features, frowned. That will be costly. Chairwoman. Maya met her gaze evenly. Not as costly as losing the trust of the communities we serve. Without that trust, our deposits vanish, our partnerships dissolve, and our brand collapses. What is the cost of survival? Richard leaned forward. She's right. The damage is already in motion. We cannot afford hesitation. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Some argued for caution, others for urgency. Through it all, Maya sat quietly, letting their voices clash. She knew the power of silence, how it drew people back to her when the noise subsided. Finally, when the room quieted, she spoke again. This institution will not be remembered for one morning's disgrace. It will be remembered for what it did afterward, for whether it chose denial or dignity. Her words settled heavily in the air. One by one, directors nodded, The tide had shifted. By vote, her proposals passed unanimously. Clara Whitfield was placed on probation under direct oversight. Thomas Grayson was suspended pending termination review. Isabella Cruz would be reassigned to retraining rather than dismissal. Marcus Lee, whose restraint had prevented further escalation, would be recognized formally for his judgment. The meeting adjourned at 4 o'clock, but Maya remained seated for a moment, watching the directors file out. Exhaustion pressed against her bones, yet beneath it pulsed a steady current of resolve. Patricia approached softly. "You won." "Maya." Maya shook her head. "This isn't about winning. This is about setting things right. The real work begins now." She rose, gathering her portfolio once more. Through the glass walls, the Atlanta skyline glowed under the afternoon sun. She thought of the customers who would walk into branches tomorrow, unaware of today's drama, but carrying the same quiet hopes to be treated fairly, with dignity, and she vowed, silently, that they would. By the next morning, Heritage National Bank was no longer just a financial institution. It was a headline, a hashtag, a conversation at kitchen tables and office break rooms across the country. What had begun as one woman's routine withdrawal request had grown into a story of humiliation, defiance, and revelation, and the world could not look away. Television anchors replayed the now viral livestream footage. Pausing at key moments, Clara Whitfield's insistence on procedures, Thomas Grayson's smirk, Marcus Lee's hesitation, and, finally, Dr. Maya Robinson calmly laying out the acquisition papers. The clip of her quiet declaration, "I own this bank," was replayed endlessly, often followed by the stunned silence that had filled the marble lobby. Social media fractured into a storm. On Twitter, banking, while black trended alongside Maya Robinson with tens of thousands of posts per hour. Instagram flooded with edits of her standing at the counter, her poise framed by bold captions, "Strength is quiet until it speaks." TikTok clips used dramatic music to build up to the moment she revealed her ownership. But beyond the spectacle, something deeper stirred. People shared their own banking stories, moments they had been doubted, delayed, or dismissed. A college student recalled being told she needed a cosigner despite proof of income. A veteran described being interrogated while depositing his pension check. A grandmother admitted she no longer went to banks alone, fearing humiliation. The resonance was undeniable. Maya's story had become theirs. News vans crowded outside Heritage's downtown branch. Reporters shoved microphones toward customers as they exited, asking if they felt safe, respected, or skeptical. One elderly woman told a camera crew, "I saw the whole thing. That young lady stood up with grace when others would have broken down." That's what leadership looks like. Inside her office on the top floor, Maya watched the coverage with Patricia. Her assistant scrolled through feeds at a dizzying pace. "You've been invited to speak on Good Morning America. The Wall Street Journal wants an op-ed. And there are already calls for you to testify before Congress." Maya rubbed her temples. "I didn't plan to become a symbol overnight." Patricia tilted her head gently. "Symbols choose us. Maya, you just lived your truth. The rest followed." Meanwhile, Richard Coleman faced the most difficult press conference of his career. Standing at a podium flanked by the Heritage logo, he addressed a sea of cameras. "Yesterday, our institution failed one of our own. Dr. Robinson, our chairwoman, experienced treatment no customer and certainly no leader should ever face. We accept full responsibility, and we are taking immediate action suspensions, retraining, oversight, and reforms. Heritage National Bank will not hide from this moment. We will learn from it." The statement drew cautious praise from some quarters, skepticism from others. Activists noted that words had been spoken before. Reforms promised before. This time, they demanded proof. That proof began trickling out in real time. Screenshots of Maya chairing the emergency board meeting circulated online. Leaked memos revealed the new customer dignity standards, outlining protections against selective scrutiny. Anonymous staffers confirmed Thomas Grayson's suspension and Clara Whitfield's probation. For every rumor, the internet seemed to deliver confirmation within hours. Transparency, forced or chosen, was reshaping the narrative. At the same time, backlash brewed. Certain pundits framed the incident as an overreaction, claiming the employees were just following protocol. Anonymous commenters accused Maya of playing the race card. Yet these voices were increasingly drowned out by the sheer volume of testimony from ordinary people, across races and backgrounds, who recognized themselves in her ordeal. Maya chose not to answer critics directly. Instead, she granted a single interview with a local Atlanta station, sitting in a modest chair, her blazer simple. She spoke quietly. "This isn't about vengeance," she said. "It's about dignity. Everyone who walks into a bank deserves to be treated as a human being first, not a suspicion to be disproved. If my story shines a light, then perhaps fewer people will have to live their own in the shadows." The clip spread faster than any polished corporate statement. Her sincerity carried weight in ways no PR campaign could manufacture. In the days that followed, activists organized rallies outside multiple Heritage branches. Signs read, "Dignity first" and "Her money, her right." Customers lined up not to close accounts but to demand fair treatment. Some brought their children, telling reporters, "I want my son to know you don't have to bow your head when you're right." Richard Coleman, for his part, recognized the tide of history. He convened another press conference, this time with Maya at his side. Cameras flashed wildly as he declared, "We will establish an independent oversight council chaired by Dr. Robinson herself. Its mission to audit, investigate, and correct inequities across all 342 branches." Maya added simply, "Accountability is not a punishment, it is a promise." The phrase caught fire within hours. Accountability is a promise trended nationwide. Inside her home, later that evening, Maya finally allowed herself a moment of stillness. She sat at her dining table, sipping chamomile tea, the city lights glowing through her window. The day's noise faded, replaced by her own thoughts. "You never wanted this spotlight," she told herself, "but perhaps it was always coming." She remembered her mother's words from long ago. Maya, "You don't have to fight every battle, but when a battle chooses you, stand so others know it can be done." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus Lee, the security guard. Thank you for speaking to me with respect. I was just doing my job, but you made me think about what that really means. I want to do better." Maya smiled faintly. Change rarely began in boardrooms. It began in hearts, and tonight, at least one heart had shifted. By midnight, major networks declared the heritage scandal a turning point in the conversation about systemic bias in financial institutions. Analysts predicted waves of reviews across the industry. Other banks quietly began drafting their own diversity audits, not out of goodwill, but out of self-preservation. Maya closed her laptop, the glow fading. She whispered into the quiet of her home, "Let this be more than a moment. Let it be a beginning." And though the night pressed heavy, hope stirred a fragile, steady flame refusing to be extinguished. The morning after the media storm, Dr. Maya Robinson entered the Heritage headquarters, not as a humiliated customer, but as a leader carrying the weight of a new mandate. Cameras clicked as she walked through the marble lobby, though she ignored them. Today was not about sound bites. It was about building something lasting. On the 32nd floor, the boardroom was already filled. Richard Coleman stood at the head of the table, visibly relieved when Maya appeared. Patricia followed close behind, carrying binders and a flash drive. Maya placed her portfolio on the table, her expression calm yet resolute. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice. Yesterday was a scandal. Today must be the blueprint for reform." She clicked the remote in her hand, and the screen behind her lit up with the title, "Dignity First Protocols, a Roadmap for Change." The directors leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "First," Maya began, "we must acknowledge the wound. What happened at the downtown branch was not an isolated misstep. It was the product of patterns, unchecked assumptions, inconsistent practices, and blind spots in our culture. If we fail to name the wound, we cannot heal it." She clicked again. The next slide showed graphs of complaint data broken down by demographics. The numbers don't lie. Customers of color face higher scrutiny, longer delays, and more denials. These disparities are not accidental. They are systemic. The room was quiet, the weight of the evidence undeniable. Second, Maya continued, "We must protect dignity at every transaction. That begins with standardized procedures clear, transparent, and equal. No more discretionary hoops that open the door for bias." She outlined a new verification system. Every withdrawal over $10,000 would require the same two-step check. Regardless of customer identity, teller screens would guide staff through the process, eliminating gut instinct as a factor. Third, Maya said, "we will create a real-time bias interruption channel. Customers will be able to report concerns instantly through an app or hotline, with responses guaranteed within 24 hours. A director frowned. "Dr. Robinson, won't this flood us with complaints?" Maya shook her head. "Only if the culture doesn't change. If staff treat people with dignity, there will be fewer complaints. And if they don't, I want to know immediately." Richard Coleman leaned forward, nodding. "It forces accountability at every level. I support it." The fourth slide revealed a more radical step: an independent oversight council, composed of community leaders, civil rights advocates, and customer representatives. Their role would be to audit practices quarterly and publish public reports. Gasps rippled through the room. One director protested. "That's giving outsiders too much access." Maya cut him off gently. "Trust cannot be rebuilt by hiding behind closed doors. Transparency is not a threat. It is our best defense. If we resist outside eyes, we admit we have something to hide." Patricia distributed binders filled with detailed timelines, budgets, and training modules. Implementation will begin immediately. Maya said, 40 hours of mandatory training for all employees, from tellers to executives. And leadership bonuses will be tied to inclusion metrics, not just profit margins. The last slide carried a simple statement in bold: "Accountability is a promise." Silence filled the boardroom, broken only by the hum of the projector. Finally, Richard spoke. "Chairwoman Robinson has laid out a plan that is ambitious but necessary. I move we adopt it in full." The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, Maya lingered in the empty boardroom, gazing at the Atlanta skyline. For a moment, she let herself feel the fatigue pressing against her bones. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours since the incident, and yet she felt something deeper than exhaustion purpose. Patricia approached softly. "That was historic." Maya smiled faintly. "Historic doesn't matter if it doesn't last. We have to follow through." That afternoon, she walked into a conference room where middle managers had been summoned. Dozens of faces stared at her, some defensive, some ashamed, some hopeful. Clara Whitfield sat in the front row, her pearls absent, her eyes downcast. Maya began not with accusation, but with a story. "When I was 12 years old, my father took me to open my first savings account. The teller barely looked at me. She spoke only to him, as if I didn't exist. I remember thinking, one day, I want to walk into a bank and be seen for who I am, not dismissed for who I'm not." Her eyes swept the room. "Yesterday reminded me how far we still have to go. And it reminded me that leadership is not about titles or corner offices. It's about how we treat the person standing across from us, whether they're depositing a check, cashing a paycheck, or withdrawing $75,000. She paused, letting the words settle. "If you carry nothing else from today, carry this: dignity is not optional. It is the minimum standard." For the first time, Clara raised her eyes. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Dr. Robinson, I failed you. I failed our customers. I can't erase that. But if you'll let me, I want to learn." Maya regarded her for a long moment, then nodded. Learning begins with listening, and listening begins today. Later that evening, as Maya walked out of headquarters, she noticed Marcus Lee waiting near the doors. He stood nervously, his uniform crisp, his hat tucked under his arm. "Dr. Robinson," he said, "I just wanted to thank you for not treating me like the enemy yesterday. I was ready to follow orders, but you made me think about what my orders mean. I've been replaying it in my head. I want you to know I'll do better." Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's all I ask, Marcus, that we all do better." As she stepped into her car, Patricia handed her the evening's headlines. Heritage Chairwoman Unveils Sweeping Reform Plan. From Scandal to Blueprint, Maya Robinson's Next Chapter. Maya closed her eyes briefly, whispering a silent prayer, not for the cameras, not for the praise, but for the unseen customers who would walk into branches tomorrow with less fear in their hearts. The real victory, she knew, would not be in headlines. It would be in the quiet moments when dignity was no longer the exception, but the rule. 2 weeks after the downtown branch incident, Dr. Maya Robinson found herself walking the long marble hallway of the U.S. Capitol. Reporters swarmed outside, cameras flashing as if she were a head of state. She kept her stride steady, her dark blazer simple, her portfolio tucked under one arm. Patricia walked beside her, whispering updates. "You'll have 5 minutes for your opening statement, then questions from the Financial Services Committee. They've already received the footage, the reports, and your Dignity First protocols." Maya nodded, though her mind wandered briefly to the countless stories that had poured in since her ordeal went viral. Letters from single mothers denied small withdrawals. Messages from veterans grilled about pension deposits. Tears shed by grandparents who felt invisible. She inhaled slowly, whispering to herself, "This isn't about me anymore." Inside the hearing room, every seat was filled. Senators and representatives sat in rows, staffers scribbling notes behind them. Behind Maya, the gallery overflowed with activists, community leaders, and ordinary citizens who had written in after seeing her story online. Richard Coleman had accompanied her but insisted she take the lead. "This is your moment," he had said. Now he sat a few rows back, looking more like a student than a bank president. The chairwoman of the committee banged her gavel. "We welcome Dr. Maya Robinson, chairwoman and majority shareholder of Heritage National Bank. Dr. Robinson, you may begin." Maya stood, unfolding her statement. Her voice, calm yet resonant, filled the chamber. 2 weeks ago, I entered a branch of the very bank I own to withdraw $75,000. Instead of courtesy, I was met with suspicion. Instead of service, I was accused of fraud. And instead of dignity, I was nearly escorted out by security. My experience was live-streamed to tens of thousands, but the truth is, it could have happened to anyone without a camera, without a platform, without a voice. She paused, letting the words sink in. This was not about money. This was about bias systemic, pervasive, and devastating. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And it has. She lifted a stack of printed letters. Since that day, I have received over 20,000 stories from ordinary Americans who faced humiliation, denial, or discrimination in financial institutions. These are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern. Maya set the letters down gently, as though laying flowers at a memorial. Banking is not a privilege. It is a necessity. And dignity should not be the exception. It should be the standard. The room was silent, save for the faint clicking of cameras. A representative leaned forward. "Dr. Robinson, what reforms do you recommend Congress consider?" Maya glanced briefly at Patricia, then spoke with conviction. 3 measures. First, require demographic audits of financial services, so disparities are tracked and addressed. Second, establish a customer bill of rights, ensuring transparency and equal treatment. Third, tie executive compensation to inclusion metrics, not just profit. Some murmurs rose at that last point, but Maya pressed on. If leadership is rewarded only for profit, bias will always find cover. If leadership is rewarded for fairness, fairness will flourish. Another senator asked sharply, "Do you believe what happened to you reflects a nationwide crisis?" Maya met his gaze squarely. "Yes, and denying it only deepens the wound." Applause broke out in the gallery before the gavel restored order. The hearing lasted nearly 3 hours. Maya fielded pointed questions with patience, acknowledged counter-arguments with respect, and held firm to her central truth. Dignity was non-negotiable. When it ended, reporters swarmed her once more. Microphones jutted out like branches. "Dr. Robinson, do you see yourself leading a national movement?" one shouted. Maya's answer was quiet but resolute. "I see myself reminding America of something simple: everyone deserves dignity." The clip aired across evening broadcasts, headlines flashing, "Robinson calls for banking Bill of Rights," from local scandal to national movement. That night, in her hotel room, Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop open, Patricia beside her. Jamal Turner's name flashed across the screen. He had sent a direct message. "Dr. Robinson, thanks for letting me live stream that day. I didn't know it would blow up like this. If you ever need me, I'm here. Respect." Maya smiled. She typed back, "Thank you, Jamal. You helped turn humiliation into change. Don't underestimate your voice." Patricia closed her own laptop and looked at her. "You know, this is bigger than heritage now. You're not just fixing one bank. You're setting the standard for an industry." Maya exhaled, exhaustion mixing with determination. "Then we'd better set it right." Meanwhile, at Heritage headquarters, ripple effects were already evident. Branches in Texas, Ohio, and California reported upticks in customer satisfaction as staff applied new training. Marcus Lee, once nervous about his role in the debacle, now led peer discussions on de-escalation and respect. Isabella Cruz wrote to Maya personally, sharing how her retraining had opened her eyes to subtle biases she had never noticed before. And Clara Whitfield, humbled, attended her first mandatory workshop, sitting silently among junior staff, absorbing lessons she once believed were beneath her. But the reach extended further still. Competing banks announced independent audits. Credit unions issued statements pledging transparency. The Federal Reserve hinted at reviewing guidelines. Maya's ordeal had sparked not just a reform but a reckoning. Late that night, as the city lights glittered outside her hotel window, Maya whispered a prayer again. Let this not just be a moment. Let it be a movement. And in her heart, she felt the stirring of possibility that perhaps, through pain and persistence, America might begin to redefine what dignity truly meant in the places where power met the people. Spring sunlight spilled across the glass towers of downtown Atlanta as Dr. Maya Robinson stepped into the lobby of Heritage National Bank for the first time since that unforgettable day. The marble floor gleamed, polished brighter than ever. Employees greeted customers with warmth. The energy was palpably different, lighter, more respectful, more human. It had been 6 months since the confrontation that changed everything. Maya paused near the very counter where Thomas Grayson once stood blocking her way. That memory still stung, but now the space had been transformed. A sign above the teller windows read, "Every customer, every time, with dignity." The slogan was now printed on receipts, displayed on employee badges, and embedded in training modules. Patricia joined her, carrying a folder, ready for today. Maya nodded, more than ready. Today wasn't just about one bank. Leaders from 20 regional financial institutions had flown in, along with federal regulators, journalists, and community advocates. They weren't here for a press conference. They were here to witness a new chapter. Inside the boardroom, cameras were set up, microphones adjusted. Richard Coleman greeted Maya at the entrance. His once nervous demeanor had shifted. Months of working alongside Maya had strengthened his resolve. "Chairwoman," he said respectfully, "everything is in place." As the session began, Maya stood at the head of the long mahogany table. Her voice carried calm authority. "6 months ago, I came into this branch to withdraw $75,000. I left with more than cash. I left with the truth that we had systemic problems. Problems not unique to this bank, but reflective of an industry. Today, I'm proud to share what we've done since then." She opened the folder Patricia handed her and began detailing results. Customer satisfaction across our 342 branches has risen from 73% to 88%. Complaints about discrimination have decreased by 71%. Retention in underserved communities has doubled. Most importantly, every employee from teller to executive has completed mandatory dignity and bias training, with quarterly assessments to ensure accountability. Slides behind her displayed graphs, real numbers backing her words. But we didn't stop at heritage. Maya continued, "Williams Capital Holdings has rolled out the Dignity First protocols to partner banks across 5 states. We've integrated AI systems that flag potential bias in real time. We've created anonymous reporting channels that go directly to the board, ensuring no voice is silenced. And today, I'm announcing the next step, the National Banking Dignity Alliance." A collective murmur spread across the room. This alliance will unite institutions committed to dignity. It will set shared standards, publish transparency reports, and advocate for federal legislation ensuring every customer in every zip code receives fair treatment. We are no longer waiting for change, we are building it. Applause erupted, not the polite kind, but heartfelt. Maya allowed herself a small smile, though her eyes glistened. She thought of the countless letters she had read at night, tears staining the ink of strangers' stories. After the announcement, a panel discussion unfolded. Clara Whitfield, once demoted, now spoke with humility about her transformation. "I had to confront the biases I didn't know I carried. Training wasn't punishment. It was a mirror. And for the first time, I truly saw how my assumptions could wound someone else. I'm grateful for the chance to learn and rebuild." Marcus Lee, the security guard, described his journey too. "I used to think my job was to protect the bank. Now I understand it's to protect the people. Respect isn't optional, it's part of security." Even Isabella Cruz shared her perspective, voice trembling but steady. "That day, I followed orders. I thought I was doing my job, but silence is also a choice. Now I know doing the right thing sometimes means speaking up, even if it feels uncomfortable." The room fell quiet. These were not polished speeches. They were raw, authentic, and deeply human. Later that evening, Heritage hosted a community reception. Ordinary customers mingled with executives. Jamal Turner, the young man who livestreamed the original confrontation, was invited as an honored guest, standing at the microphone. He looked around nervously before speaking. "I was just a guy with a phone that day," he admitted, "but I couldn't stay silent. And seeing what came out of it, it makes me believe that even small voices can spark big change." The crowd cheered, and Maya clasped his hand with gratitude. As the event drew to a close, Maya walked alone onto the balcony overlooking the city. She watched the lights flicker, thinking about the path behind her, the humiliation, the fury, the long nights of planning, the meetings, the hearings. Her inner voice whispered the doubts she had battled. Was it worth the fight? Could the pain of one moment really bend an industry? The answer came in the faces she had seen all day, the employees who had grown, the customers who felt seen, the leaders who had committed to change. Patricia joined her quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've started something unstoppable," she said. Maya took the cup, warmth seeping into her hands. "We started it, and we'll keep it alive." As they stood together, Maya reflected on the deeper meaning of it all. She had not sought revenge. She had sought reform. She had not settled for apology. She had demanded accountability. She had not carried her fight alone. She had turned it into a collective movement. And, in doing so, she had shown that dignity was not just a word etched on marble walls. It was a promise that had to be lived, day by day, by every person who wore the bank's name badge or walked through its doors. The next morning, newspapers carried the headline, "From Humiliation to Hope Robinson Launches National Banking Dignity Alliance." Social media buzzed with clips of Marcus Lee's testimony, Isabella's quiet courage, Clara's humility, and Jamal's simple reminder that small voices matter. And across America, people walked into their banks just a little taller, expecting something different. Not just service, but respect. As Maya prepared to leave Atlanta for Washington once again, she received a message from a stranger. A grandmother in South Carolina wrote for the first time in 40 years. "I walked into my bank yesterday without fear. Thank you for making me feel like I belong." Maya closed her eyes, letting the words settle in her heart. This was the legacy. Not her title, not her wealth, not even her ownership, but the fact that one painful moment had been transformed into thousands of hopeful ones. She whispered once more, the words now etched into her very soul. "True power is not in the money we hold, but in the dignity we share." The story of Dr. Maya Robinson teaches us that dignity is not a privilege. It is a right we all deserve. It reminds us that injustice often shows itself in the most ordinary places: at a counter, during a transaction, in the glance of someone who doubts us. For older generations who have witnessed decades of change, this story speaks to the quiet truth: progress is real, but prejudice still lingers. Maya's response shows us the power of composure. She did not answer humiliation with anger, but with clarity, courage, and undeniable authority. Instead of settling for an apology, she chose reform, transforming her pain into a blueprint that others could stand on. The lesson is clear when we are denied respect. We can either shrink or stand. Standing doesn't always mean raising our voice. Sometimes it means speaking with calm conviction, armed with truth and purpose. For each of us, especially in later years, the takeaway is simple yet profound. Our dignity has no expiration date, whether in a bank, a hospital, or a family gathering. We deserve to be seen, respected, and valued. And when we demand dignity, we also make room for others to claim theirs. Thank you for spending your time with us and walking through this powerful story. If it touched your heart, if it made you think of your own experiences, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. We're grateful for you until next time. Stay strong and stay kind.